The average, you just add together and divide, and it's -3. Here you multiply both sides by 2, and then you subtract 7.
Wait, is that -3?
That's -3.
Okay.
Oh, and
And then this, to 3 decimal places, is 5.477. And then you can kind of write your inequality based off of that. The square root of 30 is greater than 5 but less than 6. And that's what I mean by that. And you may not have remembered that, and that's okay. So I'm just refreshing your memory. All right, midpoint is a point that divides a segment into 2 congruent segments. So if they say it's a midpoint, you know then, if they say M is the midpoint here, you know that this is true. Does anybody know what those tick marks mean? They're congruent, and you're going to see a lot of that. So it's shown by tick marks. That means this piece and this piece are equal, or congruent. Okay? Segment bisector is a point, a ray, a line segment, or a plane that intersects the segment at its midpoint. So for example, we have segment AB and it's being intersected by a what? A line CD, at its midpoint. If it says that this line bisects segment AB, then you can know for sure that this segment here and this segment here are congruent. That's what those techniques. Is that better? So the wording is important. If it says segment BC bisects segment CD, then you know that it cuts it exactly in half. People forget to look up the definition. Oh. Bisects, I underline that because that's an important word. You could say this is the midpoint if you want, midpoint. Midpoint. Can we move on? Okay. This is short for midpoint. Can you not read something, Grace? Right here? Midpoint. Bisects. Bisects. If it says this line bisects segment AB, that means you know it cuts it in half exactly.
Thank you.
Okay? I was going to do this little activity, but it's so basic. I'm like, and then we'll just look at it. You draw segment AB on a piece of paper, fold the paper so that the B is on top of A. So you would just fold it exactly in half, label point M, and compare. So what do you think you would find when you measured those with a ruler? Yes, and M is the midpoint, okay? So that's all. All right, so let's go on and work with some of this stuff. The figure shows a gate with diagonal braces. Segment MO bisects segment NP. So that means that these two pieces are congruent because it bisects it. Okay? If PQ is 22.6, find PN. Now, of course, you can just say, all right, I'll just double it. Yeah, but we're in geometry, so we're going to write a little more than that. Okay? So I'm just going to know that MO bisects NP at Q. So that tells me that PQ is congruent to QN. because of the word bisect. This is all, of course, leading up to writing proofs, which you know you have to do in geometry, right? So PQ is congruent to QN. So therefore, I can say, all right, then PQ plus QN equals PN. And I know that PQ is 22.6. And since QN is congruent, that's also 22.6. So that equals PN, which is 45.2. So, just to be thorough, we're going to write PN is equal to 45.2. Why do I put no line over the PN? Because we're talking about the length. And that's why we use an equal. Yeah, yeah? See, you're so smart. You do listen. Okay, turn it over. All right, point S is the midpoint of segment RT. So that tells me that this is congruent to that. Correct? Find ST. So if they're congruent, what should I do? Set them what? Equal to each other. Because this piece is equal to this piece. Because S is the midpoint. So I can say 5x minus 2 equals 3x plus 8. And then you just have to do a little bit of algebra. Whichever order you'd like to take, just find out what x is. Am I done? Of course not. I found x. Now I have to find st. So I got to take that x and plug it in there. (15 plus 8 is 23). So to be proper, I'm going to say st equals 23. Doable? Not so bad. Okay, have you heard of the midpoint formula before? Let me show you what it does, just so you can be clear. So right here in this nice picture, showing you a segment on a coordinate plane. So here's x1, y1, your first point, and it goes over to the x and y axis, you can see that. There's your second point, x2, y2. To find the midpoint, all you do is you add the x coordinates and cut it in half. And that will give you the exact x coordinate of the midpoint. And if you see it here on the x-axis and the y-axis, it makes it a little clearer as to where that formula comes from. And you have to know it for tomorrow. Okay, you got to have it. I mean, it's not that bad. Just think about this picture. You add the x coordinates divided in half to get that midpoint and that midpoint, right? Okay, so this is it. Midpoint is an ordered pair. So you have to find, sorry, divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Always know that if they ask you for a midpoint, you're looking for an ordered pair. Distance formula is derived from the Pythagorean theorem. So if you're really bored Friday night, you can like Google, how does the distance formula come from the Pythagorean theorem? Doesn't that sound like fun? No? Okay. Otherwise, you can just memorize it. AB is equal to square root of x squared minus x1 squared . That's this thing that makes that noise. Yes. That's my lunch talking to me. No, I'm just kidding. So this is subtracting the x's, squaring, subtracting the y's, squaring, adding them together, and then square root it. Have you seen that before? Okay. All right, let's work with these two things. The endpoints of GH are 7 and -2 and -5 and -6. Find the coordinates of the midpoint. So I'm just going to label. You may not need to do this, but first point, second point. Of course, I'm looking for an ordered pair because I need a midpoint. I'm going to write my empty brackets there. And then I'll just set up the formula. x1 plus x2 divided by 2. -2 plus -6 divided by 2. And do the math. 7 plus -5 is 2, divided by 2, what does that give me? 1. I'm going to fill that in my ordered pair there. -2 plus -6 is -8, divided by 2, -4. There's the midpoint, P. Okay, now, if you just have time on your quiz and you just want to see if that really does work, you can just make yourself a little sketch. I actually did. I checked it out. I'm like, over 7 down 2, let's say that's about there. There's G. -5, -6, I'm going to go way low here. And then over 1 down 4, yeah, it makes about sense if I were to do it. So you can check. Yeah, I'm a little crooked, I know. Forgive me. All right, so that's just one way to check. Okay, this problem here. The midpoint of segment AB is this. So this is the midpoint itself. One endpoint is 2, -3. Find the coordinates of the other endpoint. So stay with me on this. Okay, this is my first endpoint, and I need to find my second endpoint. That's what I'm looking for. I'm going to split it up. I'm going to find the x-coordinate of my one endpoint first, and then I'm going to do the problem over and find the y-coordinate. So I'm going to do two parts. Draw a line down the middle. Find x2 first. Stay with me because third hour was kind of like, what? It's not that hard, so just watch. Just watch first and then write. So if I'm going to find the x-coordinate first, I'm going to do this piece right here. This is going to give me the x-coordinate of the midpoint, correct? So, do I know what x1 is? It's 2, isn't it? Plus, do I know what x2 is? No, but I have to divide that by 2. So that's that part right there, isn't it? That's going to give me the x-coordinate of the midpoint, which I know is what? 5. So I can set this equal to 5. Yeah? Are you absorbing that? See, then I'm going to do the same thing for the y-coordinate. So let me just set that up right now. The y-coordinate, this is finding y2 here. I know y1 is -3. I don't know the y2, but I have to divide that by 2. And that's equal to the y-coordinate of the midpoint. So I'm going to do both these parts, and then I'll be able to find my x2, y2. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Good, because it'll be on the quiz tomorrow. Okay, so you practice it a little bit. Now, solving this, just multiply both sides by 2 equals 10. Multiply both sides by 2. And then x2 equals 8. So I'm going to write that right over here in my ordered pair. 8. Multiply both sides by 2. -3y plus y squared equals 16. Or not y squared, excuse me, it's just y2. And then what is y2? 19. So that's your other endpoint. Adding 3 to both sides. Okay? Adding 3 to both sides. It's all right. Think about, you practice this a little bit, it won't be so bad. All right. What is the approximate length of segment PQ? So this is just using the distance formula with endpoints 2, 5 and negative 4, 8. I'm going to label this x1, y1, x2, y2. And then I'm going to write down the distance formula and plug in what I know. Do you have to write it down? No. But it's just easier for showing you. And then just plug in what you know. And do the math. So, negative 4 minus 2 squared plus 8 minus 5 squared. Do everything underneath here first. Square root is the last thing you're going to do. Square root of 45. Now we could just give you the decimal answer, or we could just put it in simplified form. Remember simplified form? We practiced that. Yeah, you have, yeah. You have to think what factor is a perfect square, and it is the square root of 9 times the square root of 5. And then you take the square root of 9, and you would write PQ equals 3 times the square root of 5. Doable? You can do this, all right?